I've been investing in property since 2002, so that's 22 years. I've also been helping others invest in property for the last 14 years, and I'm often asked, Nero, what would you do if you had to start again today without the portfolio that you've built over the last 2+ decades, but with all that experience? So I decided to make an episode to answer that question. Today, I'm going to go through a 5-step roadmap that I would go through if I was starting again today, if I had to buy my first investment property in today's economic environment. And step 1 might surprise you. It's actually a question. And the question is buying an investment property even the right thing for you? Let me explain. Almost everyone who wants to invest in property wants some form of passive income down the track. That's a great goal. However, because of the popularity of such books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which talk about only buying properties for positive cash flow, many people think they need to start by buying properties that give them positive cash flow. Now, books like Rich Dad, Poor Dad are written based on what happens in America, a country with over 300 million people. The economics, the fundamentals, they're all very, very different. In Australia, apart from when interest rates were at record lows, property investing has generally not been a cash flow play, it's been a capital growth play. That means that you're looking to buy properties that are set to rise in value over time to build your net wealth. And with where interest rates are right now, the odds are that if you look to buy an investment property, you will start off having a cash outflow or you'll have negative cash flow each and every month. So what I would say is that if you are someone who can't afford at least $1,500 to $2,500 a month to put into an investment property on average, then buying an investment property right now may not be the right course of action for you. An investment property in 2024 may not be the right investment vehicle for you, because with where the market is placed right now, the best opportunities for growth will require you to incur some form of negative cash flow to begin with. So the question is investing in property right for you? It comes down first of all to your cash flow, and then of course, what is your borrowing capacity? How much will banks lend you? Step 2, find areas with hockey stick type growth. Right now, for example, I'm hearing a lot of talk about the Melbourne property market. Melbourne is our second biggest capital city. It's been one of the worst performers in terms of capital growth over the last 2 years, and many people are saying now is a great time to buy. Personally, I don't have a working crystal ball. Therefore, I look at data. And when I look at the data for Melbourne, it shows me that prices are falling. Even if I look at it from a suburb by suburb perspective, I struggle to find any suburbs that are rising quite steeply right now. So therefore, for me, I would not be recommending you buy in an area like Melbourne. It's not going to give you great growth, especially in the short term. Now, of course, you might be saying, yeah, but Nero, property investing is a long-term game. It is, but what's the point of buying a property today that falls in value or fails to rise in value over the next 2, 3, even 5 years? You'd do better by keeping your money in the bank. Now, many people, though, will say, oh, no, it's now the bottom of the market. Prices have fallen. It's the bottom of the market. You need to buy now. Well, again, they probably have a better crystal ball than I do, because for me, I don't know when the bottom of the market is, and I also don't know how long property prices will stay at the bottom. For example, the Perth market has had significant growth in the last 3 years. However, I remember when in 2011, 2012, people said, the Perth market has reached the bottom, now is a great time to buy. And you know what? They were half right. The Perth market did reach the bottom and prices did stay flat, except over the 10-year period, prices rose 1% in total. So imagine if you bought a property in Perth when everyone said it was the right time to buy because it was the bottom of the market. You picked the bottom of the market and then saw virtually zero growth or 1% growth for 10 years. That isn't really what you're looking for, is it? Instead, what I would be saying is that when you choose to buy, will impact where you choose to buy. So you can get some good growth in the short term. I will come back to the long term in just a moment, but you want to look at what I call hockey stick growth, the growth that's really accelerating so that you can get a really good chunk of equity in the first 12 to 24 months. Now, of course, you might be skeptical. You might say, how is that possible? Well, I run a buyer's agency that's done that repeatedly for countless clients. Here's a text from a client who we helped make $100,000 in equity uplift in just 6 months. And here's another where we helped make the client $140,000 in 10 months. And we do this repeatedly, almost predictably. So how do you achieve these kinds of results? You want to look at areas where there's strong sales activity, where properties are selling more quickly today than they were, say, 12 months ago. You want to then look at how much discount people are getting. How does that compare to 12 months ago? How strong is the market? What is the temperature of the market? How quickly are property prices rising every month? And yes, it's a lot of work, but when you get this correct, you can make significant gains in a very short amount of time. Now, of course, though, you don't want to buy in areas that are going to rise in value over the next, say, 2 years and then fall backwards again, right? I've seen this happen a number of times over my career, especially when people look to buy in either mining-heavy areas or tourism-heavy areas, industries that are very, very volatile. So then step 3, look for areas that not only have good short-term fundamentals, but also long-term fundamentals. What is the demand over supply ratios like? What are the owner occupancy ratios like? What is the economic strength of the area? How quickly is the economic output growing? How does that compare to the state average, or how does it compare to history? We want to look at data. We want to look at facts, fundamentals, and economics. You want to really look at these data factors. You don't want to say, oh, I know the area, therefore I'm sure it's going to rise in value. Most people who say that are buying in areas that they're familiar with, that are probably close to home or close to where maybe a friend or someone they know lives. They're making their decisions emotionally, whereas as you can see, I'm asking you to look at the data. I'm sharing with you what facts and figures you want to look at to ensure that you can get not just short-term growth, as I said in step 2, but then consistent long-term growth. Because no matter what, there is no area that is going to rise 10, 20, 30% every year forever. It's impossible. Yes, though, there will be certain periods of time, maybe a 1 to 3 year window, where areas will experience that significant growth. That's the hockey stick growth that I was mentioning. But then we want to see that growth then return to more normalized level and keep rising that 6, 7, 8% per annum to keep giving you consistent long-term growth. Then step 4 is cash flow. Now, I mentioned that property investing is a capital growth game, first and foremost in Australia. It is, but you still need to manage your cash flow. So yes, you might buy an investment property that is negatively cash flowed by anywhere from $1,500 to $2,500 per month, or even more, depending on where you choose to buy. Now, that's okay. However, you can't keep buying properties that might cost you, say, $2,500 per month. You have 4 properties, that's going to be $10,000 per month. That's not going to work for most people. So instead, how do you then build a property portfolio if each property you buy is going to be negatively cash flowed? You need to look at the rental demand. And that has a number of implications. You see, no matter how good you think an area might be, what the story is, how much prices might be expected to rise, if you can't get your property rented quickly, everything goes pear-shaped and there's a whole lot more stress that you have to experience. So that's why you want to be targeting areas with very tight vacancy rates, where there's significant rental demand. Demand is higher than supply. That will give you a high level of confidence that your property will get rented quickly. That's the first thing you want to look at. But secondly, when rental demand is higher than supply, the odds are that rents will continue to increase every year. Now, most states have some form of law that essentially states you can only increase the rent once per year. That's okay. It just means that rents will more than likely increase a fair amount every year based on demand being higher than supply if you target the right areas. The key thing, though, is that by targeting those areas with high rental demand as rents rise, your negative cash flow will be neutralized. So if you take a very low risk approach, maybe you buy a property that costs you $2,000 a month negative cash flow before any tax benefits, mind you. The rents rise, maybe it takes 4 years, 5 years for that negative cash flow $2,000 a month to become maybe $200 a month or maybe even zero. Then you can go and buy a second property that's again going to cost you, say, $2,000 negative per month, but now you've got 2 properties that are costing you the same as what one property did from a cash flow perspective. That's how you build a portfolio over time with a very low risk manner. Now, of course, there's ways you can do it more quickly, but if I was starting again today and I wanted to know, well, how do I build a property portfolio if every property is going to cost me money? I'd be focusing, yes, on the capital growth factors that I mentioned earlier on, but I'm also looking to buy in areas that are going to give me rental growth as well. So I want capital growth in the short term, then I want capital growth in the long term, and then I want rental growth. I want 3 goals to be achieved when I'm looking to choose an area to buy in. Only if I've got confidence that I'm going to achieve those 3 goals is an area then worth me investigating further and potentially then looking at actual properties to buy. Step 5, choosing the right property. Now, this is key because you can choose the right area, but if you choose the wrong property, it will hurt you. For example, in the North Shore of Sydney, I was speaking to someone who had a property and couldn't get it rented, couldn't keep it rented. They kept saying they went weeks without getting a tenant, which made no sense to me because I knew the vacancy rate in that area was extremely low. I knew there was massive rental demand. There was a shortage of properties. So what was going on? But when I investigated further, I found that they had bought a 2-bedroom penthouse unit in an area where the average property that people wanted was either a 4 or 5 bedroom house. So they bought the wrong dwelling type for the suburb, thinking that it didn't matter what they bought, they'd chosen a good area, but it backfired on them. So you need to choose the right type of property. But the question then is, how do you know what is the right type of property? Well, the first thing to understand is that you're buying an investment property here. You're not buying somewhere that you want to live. So that means that you need to almost take a lot of your personal preferences out and look at what do owner-occupiers in that particular market want. What is their desired land size range? Do they want 3 bedrooms or 4 bedrooms? Does it matter? What amenities do they want to be close to? You need to understand the specifics and dynamics of that particular area. You can't just say, for example, okay, I live in Sydney and I know that in Sydney, most people will pay a premium to be close to a train station. Therefore, I want to buy in, say, another area, but only look at properties that are close to a train station. People may not necessarily pay that same premium to be close to a train station. You'd be surprised how often they won't. So you need to really understand the local dynamics of that particular area that you're choosing to buy in and buy the property that owner-occupiers want to buy and live in, because that's what's going to give you maximum capital growth. And generally, in my experience, that's also what tenants want to rent. And then finally, how would I use everything that I've just showed you to build a property portfolio? Well, first of all, I'd be tracking the value of my property every year to see how much equity I've got in it. I've spoken about how to use equity in the past, and I would then look at my cash flow situation. Do I have the cash flow availability to buy a second property? If not, then you want to wait. But as soon as you have enough available cash flow and your equity is right, and of course the banks will lend you, that's when you buy your next property. You just rinse and repeat. Keep doing this in a very low risk manner. Yes, you can do all sorts of other more advanced strategies like subdivisions and renovations and everything else. But if you're someone who's time poor, who just wants to have your investments work for you with as minimum hassle as possible, then following this simple roadmap that I'm outlining for you will allow you to buy quality properties and build a good portfolio in the next 10 years or so. So we're doing this very conservatively. You can do it faster if you want to, but it allows you to achieve your financial goals while minimizing risk and maximizing upside. And if you'd like more help with that, check out the link below to get totally for free the audio version and digital version of my book. Otherwise, I'll see you next time.